Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today it's going to be sort of like an unboxing and testing out, but it is for my brand new pressure canner. This is the first pressure canner that I've ever had. I've water bath canned and I actually picked this up. This is a 16 quart, so if you are in the market for one and you don't have to process like 70 or 80 pounds worth of something at one time, this is a pretty decent size. This is a 16 quart, so it comes with a 12-year limited warranty on the bottom, but this is Presto brand, and on the top it tells you it will hold 12 half-pint jars, 10 pint jars, and 7 quart jars. So I have quart jars here. This is what I'm going to be processing today. So this size jar, 7 of these will fit in there at once, which is a pretty good size for us. We're only a family of 3, and what I can is usually just out of my garden, or like today, our Hy-Vee store had a pretty good sale on potatoes, so that's what I'm using. But I'm not processing like 20 jars of something at a time, so one this size is perfect for us. It's 16 quart. And this can also be used as a pressure cooker, not just a canner. So if you're in the market for a pretty decent sized pressure cooker, I have a Farberware pressure cooker, but it's like the Instant Pot. It's like a knockoff of Instant Pot brand, where it's the electric one. This, of course, would just be used as a stovetop one, but I really don't pressure cook a whole lot of stuff. Usually only beans whenever I'm making baked beans. So this will only be used as a canner for us, but this was $78 even. $78 at Walmart. I've been looking at pressure canners for quite a while. This was definitely the cheapest one that I found in store or online anywhere. I think the cheapest besides this started at over $100. So I picked this one up. We're going to give it a try, but out of the box, this is what it looks like. So here is your pot itself. Then you get the rack that sits in the bottom. Even on your water bath canners, you're never supposed to sit your jars just directly on the bottom of the pot. You're supposed to have a rack or a basket of some kind in the bottom of there. Otherwise, it can cause your jars to crack. So this is what it looks like. It's got like these little feet that are raised up on the bottom there. So you get your little rack that goes in the bottom. Then you have your lid. So this here in the middle is your little pressure gauge where the steam comes out. Then you have the little pressure valve here on the side. Like if you have an Instapot or something, you know that that pops up once it's gotten enough steam to reach pressure. And then this here pops out. It's like a little rubber seal. I was reading the book a little bit before I opened this. I forget what you're supposed to do as far as taking that thing out, or when you're supposed to take it out. But anyways, that is rubber, so it does come out. Just gonna sit that there, and then of course you get your little booklet, and then the pressure gauge. I guess this is the actual gauge itself, and this sits on top of that middle part, and this is supposed to be adjustable. Where did I read that? That must have been in here. So you can adjust that pressure gauge right there. 5 pounds, it will hold 5 pounds, 10 pounds, or 15 pounds of pressure. So I know like on some pressure canners that I've seen, they have what looks like a little thermometer kind of thing almost, and it's round and it has like different numbers, and the needle will move back and forth. This one, you just hold your pressure with this little thing, so I'm hoping that's not going to be a problem for me. Like I said, this is the first time I've ever pressure canned. I've water bath canned, and I have a jar of water bath canned potatoes to compare these ones to see if they look any different doing it pressure canned versus the water bath canned. But then they give you in the back of this little book some recipes for some different things. They've got for like beets, carrots, mushrooms, corn, different beans, some spaghetti sauce with meat in it. So you get quite a bit with this little canner. But then you do also get this little warning here. I watched, because I was nervous about getting a pressure canner, because I know that if you don't do them right, they can actually explode. If you try to take the lid off too fast, it will blow up through your ceiling. So there was a woman who I saw on YouTube, and I can't think of the name of the channel now, it just popped up in my feed, but she said that she uses her pressure canner outside on like a little portable burner thing, so she doesn't have to worry about that. And I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I'll go get one of those, and then I won't have to worry about it. But that is literally the first thing that you pull out of the box with this pressure canner. It tells you, do not use a pressure canner on an outdoor propane or butane burner, because the temperatures get too high and it can warp your canner and it could cause it to explode outside. So we're just going to be using this on the stovetop and be very, very careful about watching and making sure that we don't take the lid off of it until the pressure is down to absolutely 0. So first things first, you have to give everything a quick wash with some warm soapy water. And then of course I have to get my jars washed. Those are brand new, and those are Anchor Hawking brand jars. I've not used those before. I've used Ball brand jars, and I have used Golden Harvest brand jars. But Menards had some Anchor Hawking jars on sale the last time I went there, so I picked up some of those actual canning jars, not just like regular decorative jars. They're canning jars. So I picked up a set of quart jars and I think a set of pint jars in that brand also. But I'm going to go ahead and get everything washed, and then we are going to get started on these potatoes. And I am using the potato recipe from the Ball Blue Book. I got everything washed, the canner dried off, and then my jars are actually in the canner in just a little bit of water that's down in there. And I've just got it on medium heat because these potatoes have to be hot packed. So I'm just keeping my clean jars hot inside of the canner itself. And to keep your jars from falling over while they're sitting in there, I put like an inch or so of water inside of the jar to hold it upright, because if you don't, sometimes they will tip over because they'll float instead of sinking down onto the rack like they're supposed to. But I just washed the potatoes once, and the recipe, the directions, which is the same way on the Amish potatoes that I did, you have to wash them. So I have a vegetable brush here, put them under cool running water, and I scrubbed them really good. So you wash them before you peel them. So then the next step is to peel all of the skin off, and then you rinse them off really good again before you dice them into little cubes. Not like little cubes. This is my last jar of my water bathed Amish potatoes that I did. So you can see the size that I cut the potatoes for that, and they turned out really, really well. We've eaten the other 4 or 5 jars, whatever I got. This is my last one left, so I'm going to try to cut these ones the same exact size that I'm doing today in the pressure canner. And once they're all done and processed, I'm going to compare the way that the pressure canned potatoes look to the way that these Amish potatoes look. But I washed them once. My next step is going to be to peel, then rinse them again, and then to dice them into that size. And after that, we have to boil them for 10 minutes before we can pack them into jars. Now, the Amish potatoes, I can already tell you, were way easier. It was a lot less steps. You just washed them really good, peeled them, rinsed them again, diced them up, and then they went into cold jars and into a cold water bath canner, and everything got brought up to a boil that way. These are hot packed, so the food has to be hot and your jars have to be hot. So you have to be very, very careful whenever you're packing them and getting them ready to go into the canner to actually process, because you will burn the crap out of yourself. Okay, so my potatoes have boiled for 10 minutes, like I said. So there they are. I've taken my hot jars out of that canner, and I turned the heat up on the pressure canner itself on the burner because it said that the water needs to be simmering whenever we put the jars in there. So this recipe says, if desired, you can add salt to the potatoes. So it's not necessary, but it says if you are going to do a quart jar, then it is 1 teaspoon of salt. And if you're doing a pint-sized jar, then you're doing a half a teaspoon. So pint-sized jar, half teaspoon, a quart-sized jar, 1 full teaspoon. If you want, but you don't have to add salt to it. That just says if it's desired. I'm going to put some in mine. It doesn't matter exactly which kind of salt you use. You could use regular table salt. You could use sea salt, Himalayan salt. I'm going to use this pickling and canning salt because I have it on hand. I'm going to get my measuring spoon out. 1 teaspoon. Now, the only difference with this, the water bath potatoes that I did had to have vinegar added to them to give them some more acidity. This just needs the salt. So now I'm putting the potatoes into the jars. It says to pack them with the hot potatoes and then to put boiling water, either the water that the potatoes were boiled in or another pot of boiling water, and then fill them, leaving 1-inch head space. So right now I'm just trying to get the potatoes into the jars, and then I'm going to add my salt and then my boiling water. I can get a couple more in here. And the head space on this is different. The Amish potatoes, I think, only got a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch head space. So, little bit different. Okay, so I got 5 jars out of this. One of them I wasn't able to fill. You can see I dropped a couple of potatoes on the counter. You'll always want to be super duper clean whenever you are home canning food, so those potatoes are just going to get pushed off to the side and my dog will eat those. I would never pick something up off the counter and then drop it into one of the jars. Next is going to be our salt. So we've got a teaspoon per jar. Okay, and next is the hot water. And 1-inch headspace should be to this lip right here, but I'm going to measure just to be sure. Yeah. Just a couple more little drops in there. So that should be our 1-inch headspace. So then what you do, once you have enough water, is you want to take your little spatula and you're just going to go down each side of the jar and push it towards the center. That gets all of the air bubbles out. You will always want to make sure you're pushing the air bubbles out of anything that you can, whether it's water bath or pressure canned, because those air bubbles are what leave little pockets for bacteria to breathe in. So I'm going to finish filling the rest of these with water, and then we're going to move on to wiping down the rims and putting the lids on. Okay, next step, I have a paper towel here, and I have a little bit of vinegar. I'm just going to dampen that paper towel with vinegar, not soaking wet, but just damp. And we're going to go around and we're going to wipe the rim of all of these jars with that to get any food residue or any of that water that we poured in off of there. And you can do this just with water, just a wet paper towel. I just like to use vinegar because vinegar has some antibacterial properties. Okay, so they've all been wiped. Now you're going to use your lid lifter. This little magnet tool. You're going to sit this with the wax ring. You'll see your lids have a little red wax ring. You want to put that on the lip of that jar. You're going to put a ring on, and you're just going to finger tighten. These jars are really hot, so you want to have an oven mitt to hold that, and then just finger tight. Don't over tighten it. Don't use your little ring tightener that comes with your canning stuff. Just finger tight before you process anything. Okay, so all of those lids and rings are on. The next step is we're going to take our jar lifters. We're going to move these over to the pressure canner that's on the stove. And then we are going to put the lid on, and it says to let the steam vent out of the top for 10 minutes before we put the pressure gauge on. The ball book, the recipe for this says that it needs to be in 2 inches of simmering water, and the pressure canner that I have says that you always have to have at least 3 quarts of water in there. which looking on the jars looks to be that 2 inches that the ball book calls for anyway. So okay, so the instructions for the canner said that whenever you put the lid on to press down on it, and you can actually hear like a hissing sound whenever you press down on it, and that is that seal that's on the inside actually smashing down and sealing all that steam inside. So you press down and then you turn it until it is locked into place. It's a little bit hard to turn, and then I have my pressure gauge here set up. So I took the first ring off like it said. With all of these rings on, it holds 15 pounds of pressure. With one ring off, it's 10 pounds, which is what the recipe calls for the potatoes. And with both of those rings off, it holds 5 pounds. So it's ready for the 10 pounds. I have to wait until the steam starts coming up out of the middle consistently, time it for 10 minutes, and then we drop this bad boy on. And then once this starts to wobble back and forth, we start a processing timer for 40 minutes for these quart-sized jars. Okay, so it's been the 10 minutes of venting, and if you can see in the back, that little lever popped up saying that the lid was locked. It actually popped up before I put the little pressure gauge on, so I just popped it on a second ago. And now we are waiting for it to wobble back and forth, it says. So yeah, it's nice and loose on there. So when it starts to wobble, we're going to start our timer for 40 minutes. It's been probably about 5 minutes since I put the pressure gauge on, maybe a little bit longer, but you can see it started rocking. So the booklet did say that you may have to adjust the temperature, like turn it down a little bit, the burner itself, because you want it just to rock really slow. When it first started rocking, it was like really going to town, so I turned my heat on my burner down just a little bit, and I'm just watching to make sure that it keeps a nice steady rock back and forth. And I've started my timer for my 40 minutes. So we're just going to try to keep it at that steady, even rock until that 40 minutes is up, and then it says you turn the burner off. Lift the canner itself, the entire thing. Don't try to take the lid off. It says take the entire canner and just move it off of the burner so that it's off of the heat source. And then you have to let it come down to 0 pressure. I'm probably, because I'm scared of mine, this is the first time I've ever used one, I'm probably just going to let it completely cool off before I even go anywhere near it. But yeah, I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Okay, so it is almost 11 o'clock at night, so it's been about 3 hours since that pressure canner came off of the burner, and the pressure was completely down. I'll show you here on the lid. So that little metal gauge there that pops up was completely down, and I took the little weight, the pressure gauge off. No steam came out when it came off, which means that it was at 0 pressure. However, it was still burning hot, so be really careful whenever you get ready to take the lid off of your pressure canner, because it is still holding quite a bit of heat. But I got my jars out with my little jar lifter, and this is what the jars of potatoes look like right now. that just came out. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. I'm not super happy with the way that they look. For being my first time pressure canning, I mean, the pressure canner worked. Nothing exploded, thank God. So I still have my face attached. My house is in one piece. But I don't care for the way that these potatoes look. They kind of got like a yellow color to them, and they look like they're really, really mushy, which I don't like. They got boiled for 10 minutes before they went into those jars, and then they processed for 40 minutes. So that's a total of 50 minutes that the potatoes cooked, and these ones look like mush. However, these Amish potatoes that I have over here, when they get water bath canned, they get boiled for 2 whole hours in the water bath canner, and that's what those ones look like. And then there's the pressure canned potatoes. So I don't know if it's just the potatoes themselves. Maybe they were too old, that's why they were on sale, and that's why they kind of turned to mush, or if it's just the pressure canning method itself. But as of right now, I think I prefer the water bath canning method for the potatoes, because to me they just look more appetizing. But I will come back and check these in the morning and see if they look any different, because things do look a bit different once they have cooled down completely. So I'm going to go to bed now. You have to give them at least 12 hours to seal like they're supposed to before you check them. So we're going to go to sleep. In the morning, I will come back and we will check the seals and see if the potatoes look any different. Okay, so it is the next morning. This is what the potatoes are looking like. Not a whole lot different than last night. I think what it is with this recipe is they are getting just way overcooked, because they wanted them boiled for 10 minutes before you started the canning process. Usually things cook as they're being canned. Like these Amish potatoes that I did, you know, they were raw packed and then they just cooked inside of the water bath canner. 10 minutes of boiling potatoes is usually enough for them to be soft enough to mash. So they were completely cooked, and then you put them in that pressure canner and they cooked again. So I think that's what happened, is they just got way overdone. I mean, I followed the recipe. That's what the recipe says in the Ball Blue Book. I followed it to a T because this was my very first time using a pressure canner. But I won't be using that recipe again because I'm not happy with the way that they look. A lot of them just completely disintegrated, and I think they're just going to be really mushy. But we will chop them up and turn them into hash browns, or heat them up and then just mash them the rest of the way and use them for mashed potatoes. They're going to get eaten either way. They're not going to be wasted because we're a potato family. But I did read quite a few posts online from people who can, and they said they had the same problem. And so what they do is they just bring their water up to a boil and they blanch their potatoes in that boiling water for like 2 minutes. And then, of course, you hot pack, and it's just enough to get the potatoes hot. And then they poured their boiling water over them and then processed them to keep them from getting overcooked. So I think the next time that I do this, that's what I'm going to try to do to try to keep them from getting so mushy and overdone. But using the pressure canner for the first time was a success. It's still in one piece. I'm still in one piece. My house is still in one piece, so nothing got blown up. It sealed like it was supposed to. Everything on it worked like it was supposed to. So I definitely would recommend that canner if you're in the market for one. Like I said, it's not a huge one, but if you don't have like a giant farm or a huge family where you're processing like 40 to 80 pounds of something at one time, this would be perfect for you for a small batch canning, 5, 6, 7 quart jars at a time. It can hold 7 quart jars. I think it was 12 half pints and 10 pints. So that's quite a bit of jellies and jams and green beans and things that you would get out of a regular home garden. So like I said, I picked that up at Walmart, $78. I would say it was a good buy. It's Presto brand. If you're on the lookout for one, I would definitely get it. But I'm going to have to experiment with some of the recipes that the Ball canning book is giving us here, because they disintegrated my potatoes. But aside from them just being overdone, I did hear all of these lids pop last night before I went to sleep, which meant that they sealed, but you always want to test your seals. So, I don't know if I can do it with one hand. There we go. It's a two-handed job. So what you want to do is you always want to take your rings off, and you want to wash them, and you want to take some warm soapy water and wash down the outsides of your jars and your lids, and then dry them off real good so they don't get rusty. But what you do to test your seal, you push down in the very middle. As long as it's down and nothing's popping up and down, that means it's sealed. And another thing you can do is you can just tug on it with your fingertips. If it's not moving, you don't hear any like hissing, like when you open a pop or anything, like where a seal's come undone, then you are good and sealed. That is definitely good and sealed. Like I said, they all popped last night. So now I'm going to go ahead, take the rings off of the rest of these, and then I'm going to wash them, dry them off real good, and I'm going to put labels on them so I know what they are and when they were made. Most home canned foods, your expiration date is 1 year from the date that you make them. A lot of them will last longer than that, but that's just a good rule of thumb to go by, is 1 year for any home canned foods. So you can see on these ones here, I did these in September of last year. So I made them 9 of 2022, so I put my expiration is 9 of 2023. So that's what I'll do for these ones also. You always want to keep your expiration dates on everything, especially if you do a lot of canning, because you will get your batches mixed up. But that is the end of this little adventure trying out a pressure canner for the first time. If you learned something, please give this video a thumbs up, or if you just like laughing at me completely mushifying my potatoes, you can give it a thumbs up for that too. I will see all of you guys in the next video. If you have not subscribed yet and you do enjoy the content that's on this channel, please consider subscribing. Also, if you would like to make a monetary donation, you can do so through the Buy Me a Coffee link down in the description box. That is never necessary. However, I'm not going to share any information with people that pay that I don't share with people who don't pay. So that's just completely up to your discretion. If you feel like giving some money to somebody, then do it. But if you don't, there's no pressure. You're not missing out on any of my content if you don't.